Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So this is just the major takeaways from the international business course. In the first chapter, Introduction to International Business and Globalization, the intended learning objectives were to define international business and why globalize, and the major criticism for globalization or offshoring, and different operating modes for a company in international business. So defining international business is the trade and investment activities done by companies in two or more countries. This is for the definition of international business. Factors that increase globalization amongst the several factors are the rise in technology, liberalization of trade, the growth of consumer pressure for lower prices and better qualities for goods and services, and the governments that lower trade restrictions. Coming to what is wrong with globalization, the major criticism for globalization is that it increases the environmental stress and the stress on people and the stress for economic growth, and it may lead some people, offshoring may lead some people to have the criteria of displaced workers, which leads to trade good jobs for bad ones. That is for what is wrong with globalization. So why do companies engage in international business? For sales expansion, resource acquisition, and risk reduction. Sales expansion and resource acquisition are self-explanatory. As for risk reduction, two things. In the case of business cycle, for example, if you are operating in a country that is currently suffering from a recession, then you are operating also in another country offshore that is hopefully not having this domino effect and not having this contagion and not suffering from the same recession or in another wave in the business cycle. Also to counter-attack competition, like in the example of the company of Procter and Gamble, which used it as a counter-attack to against its competition from Japanese companies. Also, there is in the end note, for example, the example of risk reduction amid the COVID pandemic. Finally, what are the different international business operation modes? We have exports and imports of goods, exports and imports of services. We have foreign direct investments. We have collaborative agreements. We have studied various forms of collaborative arrangements, such as a joint venture, an equity alliance, a turnkey operation, a management contract, franchising, and licensing. So a company's competitive strategy influences how and where it can best operate. There is a big disagreement about the future of international business and globalization. For example, currently in the news you'll find, is globalization still going on, or countries are now handling everything from production to distribution to manufacturing to distribution domestically amid the crisis. But amidst the COVID crisis, a multinational corporation which operates with more than one country can minimize risk, definitely, because in a country less severely hit by the pandemic, especially if its operating mode is not exporting, but collaborative, such as franchising, for example, it can still make high sales in countries less affected by the current pandemic. Strategies in international business. In this chapter, the main intended learning objectives were to understand strategy. What is a strategy? A strategy is the framework that managers use to make decisions to maximize their company's value creation, performance, and to determine the competitive moves and business approaches that run a company through having a vision, which is the ultimate goal for their firms, and their guiding values, and having a mission as to how to achieve those goals, and knowing that their company is influenced by the environment surrounding it, whether it's political, cultural, economic factors, environmental factors, and the industry organization paradigm assumes that the companies operate under perfect competition, so no abnormal profits can be achieved by the majority of firms in the long run. However, if this paradigm is broken and a non-perfect competition conditions prevail in the market, then smart, innovative managers with core competencies means the special outlook, skills or capacity, or their capability or technology that runs through firms' operations, weaving together all value activities into an integrated value chain. Which brings us to what is a value chain. A value chain is actually a discrete series of steps taken to move a product from conception to end users. So we have primary activity and we have secondary activity, and one of the major potential that transforms an industry, the industry work closely with through 5 forces that impact the performance of the organization, and one of them is the competitors. One of those immediate forces is the competitors, and there are 2 basic strategies for creating the value, which is cost leadership and differentiation. And companies that produce even the same commodity have different production functions, and so they have different cost functions, and so their costs are not essentially the same. So a company can lead using a cost leadership if it can produce below the average industry prices, and it can use a differentiation strategy if it offers a unique product that supports a premium price. A differentiation strategy will work well in situations where there are many ways to differentiate a product or a service, and buyers perceive these differences as having a value. So, for example, Tommy Hilfiger in the case, it differentiates its product through its branding. It was able to sell jeans for a premium price just because it was able to differentiate itself. Also, there is the pressures for local responsiveness, which are especially important in industries where value creation is a function of a company's capacity to adapt to local market conditions. And we have also the concept of economies of scale. Economies of scale is when you are big enough and you are standardized, and so you have, in the long run, you can have average cost at a minimum. So, for example, if you can purchase your materials at bulk, if you have agreements and seamless management, then you can benefit from economies of scale in the long run, where you are operating at minimum average cost. So finally, we have the integration responsiveness grid, where sometimes you have to bend to the pressures for global integration, and sometimes you standardize, and sometimes you have local responsiveness. And for example, in consumer electronics, you have to be both, to have high global integration and still have high local responsiveness. That's it for the strategist chapter.